Did you ever lose time from work or school due to gambling? For a lot of us that develop a gambling problem, gambling doesn't start by destroying everything. It starts by taking little pieces of our time until it overwhelms everything else. I used to sneak off to the bathroom when I was at work or I was in class, just so that I could sit on the toilet and spin slots, or maybe check on scores of games I'd bet on. When I wasn't gambling, I was usually thinking about it or thinking about how to score more money so that I could get back to it. So I was never present in the moment. I was like a walking zombie. And my performance at work, and God knows my performance at school, fell off. And my mood suffered as well, because I would only be happy when I was in action. And that's no way to live. When gambling becomes something that you prioritize over your responsibilities, it's already taking control. You start telling yourself, I'll make up for this time tomorrow. It'll be better tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. This was question 1 of the 20 questions that groups like Gamblers Anonymous use to help people determine if they have a gambling addiction. They say that if you answer yes to 7 or more of the 20 questions, then it's a clear sign that you have a problem. Start journaling how much time you spent gambling, or how much time you spend thinking about gambling, because it's usually more than you realize. Awareness is actually key, because you might not actually have a gambling problem yet, but realizing your behavior ahead of time could prevent you years of extra pain and suffering. And if you do need help, I feel like talking to someone who understands can honestly change everything. I always recommend that people check out a Gamblers Anonymous support group meeting or any other type of meeting where people who are struggling with gambling addiction might be. Has gambling ever made your home life unhappy? It's one of the first signs that gambling is no longer a hobby. It's become a wedge between you and the people that you love. There were days where I'd walk through the door and immediately feel tension in the air. I wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. My mood was totally determined by whether I was up or down money gambling. And my family, they could feel something was wrong every single time. I was constantly distracted, constantly irritable, and totally distant. Even when I wasn't gambling, I was thinking about it, or about how to get back to it if I didn't have any more money. Every argument, every disappointed look, it just made me want to escape and gamble more. And the only time that I was pleasant was when I was up money. So, not very often. When gambling starts to affect your relationships, it's already crossed the line. You can tell yourself that it's temporary, that you're in control, you can stop anytime you want. But addiction thrives on secrecy and denial. So if your home life feels broken right now, it's not too late to start to rebuild it. Start by being honest with the people closest to you. They don't need you to be perfect. I had to learn this the hard way. They just need you to be real. And once the truth is out there, you can begin to rebuild. There's family support group meetings through programs like Gamanon, which is the Gamblers Anonymous for those affected by someone else's gambling addiction. And going to those meetings can help your family heal. It took a while for me, but I eventually was able to repair my relationships with family and friends. You can too. Your loved ones can also help to control your finances, or at least keep you accountable if you're truly ready to stop gambling. Did gambling affect your reputation? It's one of those things that you don't realize is slipping away until it's too late. I used to be known as this reliable, consistent guy. And from the outside, I looked like someone that honestly had it all together. But once my gambling took hold, people stopped trusting me because I'd borrow money under false pretenses, like needing it for rent or books at school, and not pay it back. And if I did, it took way longer than I said it would. I'd make excuses, I'd miss deadlines, and honestly, I'd disappear on people entirely. People talk, and eventually, I became someone that they warned other people about. Don't lend him money, he's just gonna use it to gamble. I heard that a few times. It's hard when your addiction starts defining who you are. And that's exactly what happened with my gambling addiction. Your reputation is built on trust, and gambling addiction destroys trust faster than anything else I can think of. But here's the truth. It's never too late to rebuild it. You do it one action at a time, by following through on your word and staying clean from gambling. You really do become a better person when you're finally present in the current moment. And if you listen to what others around you actually need, they begin to value your relationship even more. As addicts, we often think that we can solve everything. After we get that big win, right? We'll solve it all at once. That we'll pay everyone back, we'll buy them expensive things, we're gonna re-earn their trust and their love. The reality is that while we're chasing that pipe dream, we're destroying the relationships, and we're destroying our reputation even more. Have you ever felt remorse after gambling? Have you ever felt that deep pit in your stomach after you gambled? That regret, that what did I just do feeling? Yeah, that's remorse. And it can be absolutely devastating. I can't even count how many nights I went to bed feeling sick after losing my money gambling. Sometimes I would sit in silence. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd just stare at my phone trying to figure out how to undo it all, feeling like it didn't even really happen. That's the exact feeling that I felt on one of the last days that I ever gambled. I'd used gambling money to travel to Paris. I felt like such a big shot, doing whatever I wanted, traveling wherever I wanted, because hey, I'm a good gambler, right? Well, that didn't last long. Because I sat down on the toilet in the hotel room as soon as I got there. And out of sheer habit, I started spinning slots on my phone. I gambled away every last penny that I had brought with me. And as I chased small losses that spiraled into bigger ones, I felt that remorse. When the balance hit zero, I finally asked myself, why did you just do that? And honestly, I didn't have an answer anymore. The remorse wasn't just about the money, it was about what I was becoming. I kept saying never again, but deep down, I knew I'd be back, at least until I made a drastic change. Remorse is really painful, but it's also really powerful. It's the part of you that still knows that something's wrong. The danger is when you feel it so often that it becomes normal and you stop trying to change. You can call a group like 1-800-GAMBLER or look up local support group meetings near you. You're not alone, and you don't have to keep living like this. But if you do keep holding it in, it's never gonna get better, because you'll find a reason to keep playing, and eventually, you're gonna feel that same remorse again. Did you ever gamble to get money to pay debts or otherwise solve financial problems? As gambling addicts, it's one of the biggest traps that we fall into. From really early on in my gambling, I was going overboard. But I can remember the first time that my back was really up against a wall. I just lost a bunch of money betting on the University of Maryland, Baltimore County versus Kansas State in the 2018 March Madness tournament. Now, that might sound weird, but UMBC had just taken down the 1 seed Virginia, and that was the first time in tournament history that ever happened. So I was convinced they were on a Cinderella run, and they'd easily beat the 9 seed Kansas State. Well, I lost that bet. And I was faced with either having to tell my family that I had no money left, or asking my bookie to double my credit line so I could chase it. I chose to chase, and I ended up losing everything that he gave me on a spring training baseball game the next day. I was so desperate to get back to even that I made my problems twice as bad in a pretty embarrassing way. This is a pattern that I would repeat many, many times over the 6 years that I was gambling basically every single day. I'd often tell myself, if I just hit once, it'll fix everything. But every time I tried, I ended up digging a deeper hole for myself. Gambling didn't solve my financial problems, it created them. Gambling as a solution to debt is like pouring gasoline on a fire. It only feels like a solution because desperation's clouding your judgment. If you're in this cycle right now, it's important to reach out to a financial counselor or some kind of recovery coach. There are people who specialize in helping gamblers rebuild without shame. And one example of a group offering this type of counseling, often for free, is GamFin. Recovery is all about making the right next decision, and it's really difficult to do it all on your own. Did gambling cause a decrease in your ambition or efficiency? People always recognize the financial damage that gambling can cause, but this is one most of us didn't even notice happening until it was too late. There was a point in my gambling addiction where I honestly, swear to God, just stopped caring. Work was a snooze fest, didn't excite me at all. Goals didn't really matter. And I couldn't focus on anything unless it was gambling. It was a hyperfixation. I'd sit there at my job thinking about bets instead of doing my work. And when I was bartending, that led to a lot of messed up drink orders. Yeah, some pretty bad mistakes. I remember one time this guy ordered a drink with like a double shot in it, and I gave him a drink with 0 shots in it and then brought out an extra shot and poured it in at the table and said, I gave this to you because I thought you were so nice or something like that. But in reality, it was just a virgin cocktail in the beginning. Yeah, I was totally distracted. See, my whole sense of purpose disappeared unless I was refreshing the score of the Romanian tennis match that I had a bet on. And that bet was risking a whole week of pay, of course. I wanted to be the gambler, and I was convinced that success in gambling would make up for all the lack of ambition and progress elsewhere in my life. Compulsively gambling doesn't just take your money, it takes your ambition, it drains your energy, and it gives you back nothing except anxiety, stress, and regret. But once you start recovery, that drive actually does return. Slowly, but it does. You rediscover what it feels like to have real goals again. And that's so, so valuable. If your energy feels gone, don't force productivity. And definitely stop telling yourself that one big win is gonna fix it, because it is not. Focus on your recovery. When your mind clears, ambition comes back. And naturally, little by little, as you aspire to real goals, you're gonna get that swagger back. You're gonna start finding purpose again outside of the walls of a casino, or I guess the walls of a phone if you gamble online. After losing, did you feel you must return as soon as possible and win back your losses? I did constantly. And it's one of the biggest warning signs of a gambling addiction, something that I should have been really well aware of. I can remember losing money, and I definitely couldn't afford it, literally almost every day. And I'd feel intense panic over it. I'd tell myself that I can fix this if I just get one big win. So I'd reload my balance, double down on bets that were losing but maybe not yet over, or go all in on a long shot. Basically anything to make that feeling go away. But it never really worked. I just lost more. I can legitimately remember seeing bets that were about to lose and taking an alternative spread so that I could just prove that it wasn't a bad bet. As weird as that sounds. Like if I had the Sixers to win and they were down 10 with 3 minutes left, well, I would reload my balance and I'd bet them to cover at +8. Basically, I wouldn't admit that I made a mistake. And I kept betting over and over on the same things with slightly different propositions just to prove that I was a good gambler. What inevitably happened was that it compounded my losses and it made things a lot worse. Because if they were losing, they'd continue to lose more often than not. That urge to chase losses is the heartbeat of a gambling addiction. It's not about money, it's about staying in action to keep on getting our high. It can even be a delusional way of feeling like you have to prove yourself right, like it was for me. Build in barriers. Give someone else control of your money. I had given my family control of my bank account when I quit gambling. It felt embarrassing, but it really made a difference. I set gambling blocks with things like Gamban and self-exclusions, and I also was calling people. So call someone before acting on that urge, because being honest with someone else that understands your twisted way of thinking could lead to more honesty for yourself. The moment you break that chase, you start recovery. After a win, did you have a strong urge to return and win more? People with gambling addictions always say something like, I'll quit after I get that big win. This shows how addiction doesn't care if you win or you lose. It just wants to keep you in action. The first time that I hit big, I thought I was on top of the world. I told myself I figured it out. I remember I was working at an ice cream store and I was making $8.38 an hour. And I had at the time what I considered to be a massive win, betting on a Warriors comeback the year that they had Kevin Durant, 2017, 2018. And it was at pretty long odds, I think maybe over like +2,000. They were down pretty big at halftime. Now I swore that I was a great gambler, and rather than using the money to buy something, I was now convinced that I could parlay it into becoming a professional sports bettor. From $8.38 an hour to a millionaire sports bettor. That was a lie I'd tell myself for years to justify continuing to gamble. That one win made me feel invincible, and within a few days, of course, I'd lost everything again. Winning didn't fix me, it fed the monster, and it convinced me that things could be different the next time. When in reality, I was a ticking time bomb waiting to lose it all. Winning is just as dangerous as losing when you're addicted. It tricks your brain into thinking that you're in control. When you feel that high, take a step back. Remember, every big win in gambling eventually becomes a bigger loss if you continue. Your real win is walking away, as corny as that sounds. Realizing that you're playing a zero-sum game, a game that casinos and sportsbooks have carefully designed to keep you coming back, thinking that you're going to come out on top when mathematically it was never going to happen. Remembering that might be helpful in breaking this endless cycle. Did you often gamble until your last dollar was gone? This is probably the most well-known consequence of a gambling addiction, and it's one that hits every problem gambler eventually. There were times that I'd drain my entire account. I would tell myself just one more spin, and then I'd hit zero somehow. And then I'd sit there broke and numb, wondering how I got there again. It wasn't just losing money, it was losing control. Then there was the last day that I gambled. I maxed out 3 credit cards. I was using cash advances at a casino, and I put myself into debt for what would be the next 6 months, working 80 hours a week. All that for 12 hours in a dingy room, stressing over every single bet that I made. It was not fun. I not only gambled until my last dollar was gone, but I gambled until I lost every single dollar that I could access as well. This wasn't fun anymore. In fact, I have no idea why I was even doing it anymore. This was a full-blown gambling addiction. When you're gambling down to nothing, the addiction has totally hijacked your brain. You can stop before you hit zero again. Set up self-exclusion. Block yourself from accessing the casinos. Give up access to funds to a family member or trusted loved one so you're avoiding temptation. And reach out for help. I found so much help in my Gamblers Anonymous support group meeting. You need to surround yourself with like-minded people who are striving to become better. We become the sum of who we associate with. If we're all seeking recovery, we're all going to find it. Rock bottom doesn't have to be the only wake-up call. Did you ever borrow to finance your gambling? This is where things become very destructive for the long-term well-being of a gambling addict. I remember borrowing from friends, family, and of course credit card companies, telling everyone that asked it was for bills or emergencies, or even one time saying that it was seed money to start an online business. But deep down, I knew it was just to chase my gambling losses. I told myself that I'd pay them back after I got that big win. So it never felt like I was stealing. It felt in my twisted way of thinking that I was borrowing money for a legitimate reason, and that if I paid them back in full or with interest, hey, it was no harm, no foul. This was of course the lie that I was telling myself to justify gambling on credit and continue manipulating those around me just so that I could keep putting in sports bets. I'd feel guilty deep down every single time that I asked, but the addiction didn't care. I didn't care. I just needed more fuel to keep going. And at the end of the day, I would do the mental gymnastics that I needed to make peace with it. Borrowing for gambling is one of the clearest signs that control is gone. There's no excuse that makes practical sense for it. You're not just borrowing money, you're borrowing time before everything collapses. Reach out for debt support or credit card counseling and tell those around you so they don't keep enabling the behavior that you know is destroying you. Groups like GamFin might be able to provide free financial counseling depending on where you live, so I'm actually going to link them in the description of this video. The shame fades fast when you realize how many people have been where you are right now. So being open and honest in a support group is going to be invaluable in your journey to recovery. The key is to stop digging and start rebuilding. Have you ever sold anything to finance gambling? It's something that I did quite often actually, and it's one of the hardest things to admit because it shows how deep a gambling addiction can actually go. I remember selling things like stocks and crypto, and I did it really, really often. And it sucks looking back because you look at the price of these assets now and you're like, man, if I didn't gamble away all my money, I'd be a millionaire right now. Now, I don't actually think that's realistic or obviously a healthy mindset to have because God knows that I wouldn't have held on to any of that for the amount of time that it's been. I would have sold it at some point anyway, but the sheer number of times that I bought a stock and then sold it 3 days later when I thought that the money would be better used on a sports bet, yeah, it's a little insane to think about. When gambling pushes you to the point of selling your assets, that's not a hobby anymore. You're in survival mode for an addiction. And I get it. The mindset, it becomes like whatever it takes to keep that rush going, to keep that action constant, I'll do it. But those moments, they don't have to define you forever. Your life doesn't have to be like that every single day. You can start by cutting off access to anything that can be liquidated fast. Possibly by having a trusted loved one control your bank account or manage your assets. That's what I did, as my family controlled my bank account during my early recovery. You can also reach out to a support group and to a trusted friend and just keep yourself accountable. Because once you start talking about it, the need to sell things just becomes an urge that you can't act on. And those urges pass. They lose their power with time. Were you reluctant to use gambling money for normal expenditures like food, bills, or gas? It sounds crazy, but when you're deep in addiction, gambling money becomes sacred. And during my addiction, I legitimately didn't want to spend a dime unless it was on a bet. There were times that I'd be low on groceries or my girlfriend would want to go out to eat, but I'd still tell myself that I can't touch my gambling balance. Or sometimes even worse than that, I would tell myself that if I wanted to buy groceries, if I wanted to buy something, that I first needed to win a bet for that amount of money so that my ammunition didn't actually have to leave my betting account. I would literally rather go hungry than withdraw money that I would have otherwise gambled. I called it my bankroll, but in reality, it was just money waiting to be lost. When you start separating gambling money from real life money, the addiction has you. That's how it keeps you trapped. It makes the fantasy of winning feel more important than your actual needs. Because we convince ourselves that we can handle all of our problems after we get a big win, because that is going to fix everything. But that leads to the problem of what defines a win that is big enough, and usually it leads us to just keep going endlessly to financial ruin. Start reconnecting your money to its real purpose. Set up automatic payments for your bills, and have someone help you to manage your finances if needed. In the beginning of my recovery journey, my family controlled my bank account. And I thought that it sucked, but it honestly made a huge difference in my life. Taking control of where your money goes is one of the first steps to recovery. Did gambling make you careless of the welfare of yourself or your family? It's one of the most depressing signs of a gambling addiction that's taking over someone's life. And it's honestly one of the most painful ones to face. When I was active in my gambling addiction, I stopped thinking about literally everyone else. I missed birthdays, I skipped family dinners, and I honestly ignored people who cared about me. And if I did go to any events, then I was in the corner on my phone, basically effectively ignoring everyone again, or I was sneaking off to the bathroom to place bets whenever I got the chance, basically. I told myself that I was doing it for them. Like, if I won, I would make everyone's lives better. I'd buy them nice things and, make everyone happy. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for the rush that it gave me. And the problems that I swore that I would solve through gambling were actually just being caused by the gambling. When gambling takes priority over the people that you love, that's not just financial harm anymore. It's emotional harm. And it's how the addiction spreads, then it becomes a part of your entire world. It's a little known fact that a person with a gambling addiction directly impacts 6 to 10 others around them negatively. The people who love you aren't angry because of the money. They're hurt because they lost you. Talk to the people that you've hurt and tell them that you're working on it. You're going to meetings, you're trying to be better and recover. And if you're not ready yet, then go try that first support group meeting and just listen. Hear how others have built their relationships. It's possible, but it may take some time. Did you ever gamble longer than you had planned? It's gotta be the most obvious sign of a gambling addiction. The inability to stop once you get started. And it's one that almost every addict can certainly relate to. I used to tell myself, just a few spins and then I'll be done. Or just one game and then I'll take it easy tonight. But once I started, I would easily lose track of time. Hours would pass in what felt like minutes. I'd show up to work tired, irritable, and blaming everything in my life for it, except for the gambling. The truth was that I was completely consumed by it. It's all that I cared about. I can remember sitting on the toilet and spinning slots on my phone. My legs would literally fall asleep because I was sitting there for so long, and yet I just kept going because my mind went numb. And I just wanted to get that big payout to prove that I was making a good decision spinning on a literal toilet. When gambling hijacks your sense of time, that's your brain showing you how powerful the addiction is. It's not just fun anymore. It's escape, habit, compulsion. Try just tracking your time for a week. Write down when you think about gambling. when you actually gamble if you haven't stopped gambling fully yet. And just see how long it lasts, because you'll probably be shocked at how much time and money is being wasted chasing after a big win that you'll never actually get. An awareness like that can be the spark that helps you take the next step in your life. Have you ever gambled to escape worry, trouble, boredom, loneliness, grief, or loss? It's a mouthful, but it is the classic escapism that gambling provides for a lot of us. And again, for a lot of us, that's exactly why our addiction started. When I was stressed or anxious, gambling became my comfort zone, my normal. I would tune everything out and disappear into my phone or in the casino because it gave me a sense of relief, for a while at least. It also gave me this weird sense of routine. Like, I felt like I had control when I was gambling, despite the fact that I didn't have any control of what would actually happen in the games, because no matter what was going on in my life, I knew what I would be doing for X hours during the day. It was my routine, it was my job, I thought. But when it was all over, those problems that I was running away from in my life were still waiting for me. And now I had new ones on top of them caused by the gambling itself. The debt, the mistrust, all the terrible things that came with it. Gambling isn't an escape, it's a trap disguised as a relief. It numbs your emotions just long enough to get you hooked. Start finding new outlets. Go for walks, journal, talk to someone in a recovery group meeting. You can't escape your feelings, but you can learn how to process them in a healthier way. Think about how good your life will be when you can handle your problems instead of just trying to run from them and hoping that they go away, because you'll always end up worse off that way. Have you ever committed or considered committing an illegal act to finance gambling? It's something that I told myself that I hadn't done, but in reality, I did during my gambling addiction. I remember times that I was so desperate that I thought about doing things that I had never imagined that I would ever consider. And then I actually did it. I had told my family that I was starting a business, which, in fairness, I actually did end up doing. It was called Dunk Social. It was a cryptocurrency basketball blogging platform. Yeah, great idea, Rob. And even though I started it, I didn't actually need any of the funding that I asked for to get it off the ground, but friends and family, they did give me money to start up. Then I turned around and I gambled that money, all the while with the intention of one day paying it back, but in the short term, I didn't actually care about the consequences anymore. I just wanted the money so that I could gamble. That's how deep it went for me. Addiction doesn't care about morals or logic. It just wants to be fed, even at the expense of committing fraud to my family and friends. If you've crossed that line or even thought about crossing that line, you're unfortunately not alone. Addiction can twist your thinking until right and wrong blur together. But recovery is about rebuilding integrity piece by piece, one day at a time. Tell someone the truth, even if it scares you. The moment you stop hiding, you start healing, regardless of any consequences that you'll have to face in the short term. Did gambling cause you to have difficulty sleeping? The number of sleepless nights that I'd have because of gambling, either because I was staying up late gambling or I was sitting up thinking about my gambling, was insane. And I should have known that it was a problem for me a lot sooner than I realized that it was. There were nights where I'd lie in bed, staring at my ceiling. My heart was racing because the adrenaline was pumping in my body because I was just gambling a ton of money. But more often than not, I was actually sitting there depressed because I didn't stop after X bet or cash out bet Y earlier in the day. Sometimes when I did fall asleep, I'd even dream about slot machines or winning bets that I had placed. And then I'd just wake up in the middle of the night and I'd check the results of the games that I had bet on, and I'd feel crushing disappointment because more often than not, of course, they lost. My body was exhausted, but my mind never stopped moving. The addiction was running even when I had no energy left physically. Sleep problems are actually pretty common when you're stuck in the gambling cycle. Your brain is just so overstimulated and your stress levels, they're off the charts. So it makes sense that you would struggle to slow down. Stay as far away from that as you possibly can. And if you can't shut off your thoughts, maybe it's time to go to a support group meeting instead of a casino. It'll give your mind the rest that it needs, and you'll hear stories from a bunch of other people who are there for the exact same reason you are. Do arguments, disappointments, or frustrations create within you an urge to gamble? It's one of the signs that gambling has become your go-to coping mechanism, which of course will only lead to more problems in the end. And it's honestly one of the most emotional signs of a gambling problem because it's about how we respond to pain in an unhealthy way. I used to get into fights or stressful situations with friends, girlfriends, family, and immediately I would think to myself, I should go gamble right now. It wasn't about winning money, it was about shutting off the feeling, shutting off the reality. I didn't want to sit with anger or sit with sadness, so I would distract myself by gambling. But that only ever made things worse, because then I'd be angry and broke. And when I finally ran out of ammunition to keep gambling, I had to face those facts. I can remember the night of a breakup, actually. I was mid-fight, and I got up and I walked to a different room. I locked the door and I started spinning slots. Instead of dealing with the fight, I just went and gambled. That's how bad the dependency became. It became my way to escape for a bit, when in reality, I should have been handling the problem that was building up right in front of me. I kept pushing things off just to spin a slot machine. When your first response to stress is to gamble, that's not comfort, it's conditioning. Gambling becomes the emotional escape button, and it can actually become something that you're completely dependent on to navigate through stressful or anger-inducing moments. And as we know, this will eventually end up making things worse. Start practicing something new. Pause before reacting. Still something that I need to work on. Call a friend, write down how you feel, or go outside. Because over time, these small pauses can rewire your brain to choose peace over chaos and not just expect chaos. And your brain will naturally heal itself over time. You'll still have the frustrating moments in life, but now you can actually deal with the problems instead of letting them build up while you distract yourself with a bet. Did you ever have an urge to celebrate any good fortune by a few hours of gambling? This is something that was my go-to excuse to justify more gambling than I had previously planned. And it's surprisingly common among people struggling with addiction. I can remember coming into some extra money and thinking to myself, like, perfect, I'll double this. It didn't even feel like a choice. It just felt like, boom, automatic. And it's hard to explain to someone that doesn't have a gambling addiction, but every success in life or any stroke of good luck, it became another excuse just to gamble more, which of course results in the good luck eventually becoming bad luck. Instead of enjoying those lucky or positive moments in my life, I'd end up losing everything and feeling like a failure. It's hard to explain it in a way that doesn't make me sound, I guess, like endlessly greedy, but the reality is that nothing was ever enough. Every good thing became ammunition to chase after something better. When nothing is ever enough, there's never a reason to stop, is there? When you associate gambling with celebration, it's because the addiction has linked pleasure with risk. But there's nothing to celebrate in losing everything that you just worked so hard to get. Start rewarding yourself with things that add to your life, like dinner with friends, a trip, or something meaningful that doesn't put you back into harm's way. We have to recondition our brains to see positive things in life as good things, and not as excuses to justify seeking even more. Have you ever considered self-destruction or suicide as a result of your gambling? It's the only question that I said no to out of the 20 questions of Gamblers Anonymous, but honestly, looking back, it was hit or miss depending on the day as to whether or not I could have said yes. And for far too many people, the answer is absolutely yes. There were nights when I felt like there was no way out of the situation my gambling had created. The losses, lies, and guilt, it felt like it all piled up too high to ever recover. I didn't want to die. I never attempted to take my own life. I just didn't know how to live like that anymore. And it had been the same day happening on repeat for 6 years by the end of my gambling. But I'm proof that there is a way out. It starts with asking for help. If you've ever had thoughts like that, please don't try to face them alone. Gambling addiction can make you feel trapped, but you're not. Help is out there. Gambling addiction has the highest rate of suicidality of any addiction, with 20% of gambling addicts saying yes to this question. Call or text 988 in the US to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And if you're outside the US, please look up your country's crisis line because you will have one. Talk to someone right now if you've ever thought this. Now, this was the final question of the 20 questions that Gamblers Anonymous uses to identify if someone has a gambling addiction. If you've answered yes to 7 or more of these questions, it's likely that you're struggling. But it also means that maybe you're ready to heal. I want you to check the description of this video for more resources to avoid going down the same path with your life that I went down with mine. If this video resonated with you, I urge you to go back through the beginning of this 20 question series and start from question 1. Or check out this video of someone who's struggling with gambling the same way that you are, but did find recovery. And they're now coming out on the other side even stronger. Recovery starts with honesty. That's the first step. And now we need to focus on getting better together, one day at a time.